Welcome to the For Sale by Owner Overview Training presented to you by Coldwell Banker Premier. First, we will start with a couple of disclaimers. Disclaimer: content contained herein is believed to be accurate and current according to applicable federal, state, and local laws, as well as Realtor policies and ethics as of May 2022. This content is subject to errors and omissions. This content is for the exclusive use of Coldwell Banker Premier employees and independent contractors. It is prohibited for you to copy, share, or distribute any part of this presentation without written permission from the owners. Disclaimer: as an independent contractor and sales associate affiliated with Coldwell Banker Premier, you have access to a selection of tools, technologies, resources, and educational opportunities. Attending this educational session and reading these materials included in this program are not mandatory. Nothing in this training is intended to create an employment relationship between you and Coldwell Banker Premier. Any affiliation between you and the company is that of an independent contractor status. The materials included in this training are considered best practices. The material presented here does not provide you with legal or financial advice or guidance. We recommend that you consult with your own advisors when dealing with those issues. Disclaimer: remember to comply with all laws regarding solicitation. Obey the National Do Not Call Registry rules. State do not call rules. Your brokerages do not contact list and policies, and any other pertinent laws. Follow Telephone Consumer Protection Act, state and local laws regarding telemarketing, auto dialers, bots, and pre-recorded messages. Comply with all in-person canvassing, municipal, state, and federal laws, as well as subdivision rules. Know your local Realtor Association and MLS rules and regulations regarding the allowable use of listing data. Every successful real estate agent knows that they must generate leads for their business to thrive, to grow, and to develop. The question is, where do leads come from? How does lead generation even occur? Well, there's many forms. It could be through geographic farming, demographic farming, sphere of influence, open houses, prior customers, internet leads, expired listings, for sale by owners, and for rent by owners, or other sources. And today, we're going to talk about for sale by owners and for rent by owners. The National Association of Realtors has historically said that 60 to 70% of for sale by owners will list. So the question is, why aren't all sales associates working with for sale by owners? Well, because they might seem a little scary. They might seem like they have strong personalities. They might seem like everybody else in the marketplace is pursuing for sale by owners. Those are not true. They might have strong personalities, but not everybody is competing to get those same listings. So here are some techniques that we're going to show you during this program to help you overcome objections presented by for sale by owners or objections that you have of preconceived notions. Let's talk about vocabulary. Home. The dictionary definition of home is one's place of residence, a domicile, the social unit formed by a family living together, a familiar or usual setting, congenial environment. Now let's take a look at the definition of house. A building that serves as living quarters for one or a few families, a shelter or refuge, a natural covering, a building in which something is sheltered or stored. So you can see that there is a clear difference in tone between home and house. When you are talking with for sale by owners, you want to use the word house. If you call them and say, I want to list your home, you are emotionally attaching them to that domicile, to that place where a family lives together. But if you continually talk about their residence as a house, it's a shelter, it's a refuge, it's a building. And that helps with this psychological separation for that for sale by owner. It's very subtle, but it is very potent. So where do you find these for sale by owners or these for rent by owners? They can be in the newspaper or other periodicals like rental magazines. They can be on the internet, Craigslist, for example. They can be through your neighborhood. So drive around and you can be asking your sphere. Let me know when a for sale by owner pops up in your neighborhood. Make sure you have lots of ambassadors feeding you with leads, in particular with for sale by owners. Why does an individual decide to become a for sale by owner or a for rent by owner? First, they believe they can do it themselves. And second, probably one of the biggest reasons is that they want to save the commission. They don't see the value in what the real estate professional does, but that's not necessarily because they don't think there's value to the profession. It's that they don't correlate all the work that goes into selling the property. So they think that's a lot of commission for a little amount of work. So there's an education process that has to take place with the for sale by owner. Here's a quote: "Tough times never last, but tough people do." And this is by Robert H. Schuller. And so let's take a look at a study that was done by Notre Dame University. And this study was done several years ago. And it was a study on salespeople and consumers. And 44% of all salespeople quit after the first no. 22% of all salespeople quit after the second no. 14% of all salespeople quit after the third no, and 12% of all salespeople quit after the fourth no. However, 60% of all prospects say no 4 times before making a positive decision. So that means only 8% of the salespeople are still around, still contacting that consumer, still trying to help that consumer make a positive decision. The other 92% are gone. So it's really important that you keep in mind that you're going to hear no at least 4 times from that particular consumer. And so you must be persistent, you must be tenacious, you must be patient, and you must have enough in your sales toolbox, if you will, to be able to overcome those no objections and help that consumer get to an affirmative decision-making posture. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So let's do the math. We did this, if you were able to listen to the expired overview training that we did, this same equation is in that session as it is here because the numbers are the numbers. So we'll do the math. If there are 1,000 members of your realtor association and 100% of them pursue for sale by owner listings, which we know is not true, but let's just assume it is, and 100% of those agents cover the entire MLS geographic territory, which again, we know that that is not possible. So that means all 1,000 members are pursuing all of the for sale by owners that come up in the marketplace, which again, that's an assumption we're making. We know that that is a false assumption. But if we use the Notre Dame University study and we multiply those 1,000 salespeople by 8%, that means that there are 80 agents really who are left after 4 no's. So it takes that 1,000 down to 80. Now, let's trim those assumptions and make them more realistic because we know it's not 100%. I bet it's not 50%. I bet it's not 25%. So when you whittle down those numbers to realistic numbers of sales professionals who are pursuing those for sale by owners, your competition is extremely small. Maybe there are a dozen people that you're competing with to get those listings. Those odds are absolutely in your favor, especially as you sharpen your skills and build your confidence, and you are able to talk to these for sale by owners and help them solve their problems with a consultative sales approach. You will be head and shoulders above your competition. Let's talk about that. So when working with for sale by owners, what do you have to do? You have to make contact with them. If you don't have contact with the for sale by owner, you're not going to list the property. So you have to call them, send them a letter, knock on the door, however you want to get that one-on-one contact, you need to do that. Again, remember, sending a letter would be a more passive, knocking on the door would be a more assertive. And that's up to you what style works for you and what results that you're receiving. Obviously, you want to create rapport with them. These are individuals who have decided, for whatever reason, they don't need a professional in this industry to help them. So you might need to uncover why it is that they have taken that posture. And 3, set the appointment. When you first meet them, it does you no good to try to sell them on you while you're standing at their front door. You must set the appointment so that you can visit with them and really do an interview with them to uncover what their motivations are, what their hot buttons are, what their pain points are, and what it is that you bring to their table to help them accomplish their goals and be successful in whatever their end result is, if you are able to help them be successful. And I'll give you a quick example. I worked with a woman, and we worked in the real estate business and the insurance business, and she and her husband were going to sell their house for sale by owner because whatever they got out of that house was funding their retirement, and they were moving to Costa Rica. And her expectation of what her house was worth had nothing to do with what was happening in the marketplace. It had to do with how much money she needed for her retirement to fund a nice lifestyle in Costa Rica. Humongous disconnect. And this was an individual who worked, even though she worked in the insurance side of the business, worked in a real estate office. So she heard the comings and goings every single day of contracts. It was a very curious perspective from where I sat, that she thought her house was worth literally about twice what the market could bear because of what her needs were, her intentions were. Some considerations when you are working with for sale by owners. Statistics show that 9 out of 10 buyers begin their home search on the internet. And again, I hope you caught what I said. I said home search. So when we're talking to the seller, it's a house. And when we're talking to a buyer, it's a home. We want them to become emotionally connected. We want the seller to become emotionally disconnected. So 9 out of 10 buyers start their home search on the internet. So how is that seller going to give their property maximum exposure on the internet? Every for sale by owner has to compete for buyers that are most likely already aligned with a real estate professional. Every time a for sale by owner leaves their house, technically, it's off the market. There's nobody at the house to show it when the seller is not there. So how are they compensating for that? How does the for sale by owner deal with safety and security issues when strangers just knock on their door and want to come in? It may be difficult for that for sale by owner to follow up with buyers without seeming too anxious or without putting them off. Not having that arm's length transaction is very difficult emotionally for a lot of people. Also, it is difficult for most people to negotiate, not just to have that arm's length, but once they get into negotiations, again, the emotions kick in, and it's very difficult for them to negotiate on their behalf without getting too emotional. They're not disconnected enough. And the for sale by owner may not be able to properly qualify that buyer, and I don't mean just financially. I also mean with what their motivation is. That buyer may take the house off the market, but really be looking at several other properties at the same time. And how is the seller going to be able to schedule all of the different appointments if people can just walk up and knock on that door? So it's really important that the seller is aware of these issues. Again, this might be a question that you ask while one of these questions to build rapport or to get the appointment. But once in the appointment, then you can ask more of these questions. And reasons to set the appointment, you want to preview all of the inventory in the markets that you serve, whether it's an expired listing, whether it's current active listing, whether it's a for sale by owner. You need to know all of the inventory in your market as a full-time professional. And that's what you would say to the for sale by owner. I don't have a buyer right now, but I need to know as a professional all the properties on the market. So I'd like an appointment just to come and preview your property. And you can even say, I'm not there to list your property. I really just want to preview it. But then you have an opportunity to follow up with them with a follow-up phone call, or to come back and visit if you happen to notice something about their property and you wanted to give them additional information. You can offer other real estate services to them. For example, where will you be moving to? Do you already have a house there? Can I connect you with a professional on the other end? Maybe they need mortgage reps to help them. Maybe they need title to help them. You could offer market reports. If you use Prospect Square, you can give them some market reports. If you have information on the economics of the community, maybe you can give them those reports. And you can also help qualify, and I put in quotes, suspects, because they're not a prospect until they're qualified. So you can help qualify those individuals if they want you to. And again, keep in mind all of the laws and the brokerage relationships with single agency and transaction brokerage and non-representative. Talk with your company leadership about what is appropriate for agency relationships and what you're allowed to do. In addition, other questions that you might want to ask the seller. Why did you decide to sell the property on your own? And how long are you going to try to sell it on your own? Would you consider working with a realtor at some point? Will you be staying in the area when the house sells? And this goes back to that relocation question. Are you looking for another house yet? Have you hired somebody? Can I work with you on that end? And how did you arrive at the price? That's another great question, because some of them use, well, I just picked a number. And again, remember, that was the example that I used of the woman who wanted to retire to Costa Rica. So again, other questions that you can ask when you say, where will you be moving to? The question then is, how soon do you need to be there? That's the follow-up question, because if they are, oh, well, whenever, 5 years, 10 years, there's no hurry. You're getting a feel for their motivation. But if they need to be there to start their new job in 25 days, now you have a motivated seller. How long have you owned this house? Now, again, you should know that because you should have looked it up on the tax records to find out when they bought it, how much they purchased it for. How did you determine your price? We talked about that. What methods are you using to market your property? That's a really good one. Are you prepared to adjust your price down if need be? And again, the market has been very robust for the last few years, so a lot of people may not have that thought in their brain. They might think that the market only goes up, 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 but it may not, especially if they haven't priced it properly. Why did you decide to sell on your own without hiring a professional? Again, when you ask why questions, questions that start with the word why, typically they are loaded with judgment. So you want to be very careful about how you phrase that. You could say something like, do you mind sharing with me what made the decision for you to sell it on your own? That's a softer approach, not as judgy. And because if you ask questions that are loaded with judgment, you probably will alienate that person, and that's not building rapport. If you were to hire a sales associate, what would you be looking for? If you were to list, which agent would you list with? So what would you expect from that agent? So those are just some questions to give you an idea, because if you have the opportunity to then get in front of them later and they've told you what they would be looking for or who they would want, now you are prepared to come in and overcome any other objections that they may throw towards you. Keep in mind, this was an overview class for sale by owners and for rent by owners. We strongly recommend that you take the CBU Lead Gen for sale by owner class. You can go on Desk and register for that class. Also, go on mycbdesk.com and download scripts. Read them, rehearse them, become comfortable with the scripts when talking to a for sale by owner. Go on BrandServe and download marketing materials so you have these advertising agency quality materials that you can use immediately. We have a final disclaimer, and we hope that this overview has been helpful and that you will be able to use some of the material as you grow and develop your business. As an independent contractor and sales associate affiliated with Coldwell Banker Premier, you have access to a selection of tools, technologies, resources, and educational opportunities. Your success depends largely on the efforts you put forth to grow your business. The systems and staff Coldwell Banker Premier have in place are to support and enhance your efforts.